I'm the chair and I represent District 1. I'd like to again thank the Metropolitan Library, most Metropolitan Libraries for welcoming us and offering us the room where we meet. We're most appreciative of that. I'd like to maybe ask first if we could rise and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. If you join me. Donna, if you would lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The agenda was a little late getting out, and Commissioner Bolton helped me with it, and we struggled a little bit to catch up with both of us being a little bit behind, but we did distribute the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? One item that I'd like to mention is we would like to take the zoning and variance matter of the Piedmont Road address. We'll move that up, and I'd like to maybe just take that item right after we have the district updates. Just we have the applicant here.
Actually, is he here?
Oh yeah, he is here. Yes. So I think we can maybe get you on your way a little bit earlier.
Appreciate it.
All right. Are there any other changes to the agenda, or can we accept the agenda as district? Okay, and we'll go ahead and proceed with district updates, and I'll start to my left with Commissioner Moritz.
Mark Moritz, District 6. There were lots of parties in my district, and so I went to 2 Oktoberfest and 1 neighborhood fest in Belawanda, and so that was also fun. The other update is that the Belawanda people, or the residents of the Belawanda neighborhood, asked about the Kodak lot that's no longer in use, and Kodak got back to us and they said with Link Us, they might need it, so they're not going to do anything with it at this point. This will take a couple more years before we find out what happens with that plot of land. And then the other thing is Will Köhler, who was part of the Planning and Development Committee and did a lot of work for the neighborhood's bikeways, he got nominated and awarded the Yay Bikes Advocacy Award for work on
Josh Hively, District 8. Just one update. I've reached out a few times to the folks at Chick-fil-A, but I have not gotten an official update. But I did notice today there was significant activity at that site. They've torn out all the asphalt, so there's a lot of moving machines there, and so I assume things may be back on track there, but I don't know for sure.
Hugh Crowell, District 4. Just been working with the fire station chief in District 4, the Station 19, Chris Gutterman, about the open house, the annual open house that's coming up here later in October. I'm not sure the exact date, but we've been doing a lot with getting the grounds ready. We're repainting the sign, so that's it.
Brittany Bolton, District 5. I fielded this week a constituent call about deer. I understand there was a big discussion about that while I was out earlier this fall. This was not a Clintonville constituent, it was somebody out by Easton, but just reiterated that we need to keep continuing our advocacy work with our city officials on the preponderance of deer. I scheduled another meeting at the library trying to reinvigorate the homelessness and affordable housing task force. So we'll send out more information soon, but mark your calendars for Tuesday, November 28th at 6 p.m. in this room. We'll have a panel discussion. I'm still filling out the panel, but we'll be talking about non-traditional forms of housing stock. So we'll talk a little bit about accessory dwelling units and some different types of ways to support folks with disabilities and seniors aging in place. I've also scheduled on Thursday, December 14th, again in this room, our little home, our hygiene kit drive, our annual hygiene kit drive that we do for the unhoused around the holidays. So we'll promote that heavily between now and December. We will be looking for travel size items to give to the CRC to give to folks who are unstably housed. I also attended a webinar on the 614 Beautiful grant program. I posted this on our social media, that there is an application with a quick turnaround at this point now. It's due October 20th. These are grants of up to $15,000 for small placemaking improvements in the community. And I do have some background in grant writing, so if there are residents who are interested in improving a pocket park or some other capital space like that, I would love to work with someone and try to get something together for the neighborhood. One more event coming up on Saturday, October 21st in the afternoon at Wylands in the parking lot, sponsored by CMIT and Rewash Refillery, hosted by Clipville Area Business Association. There will be an e-cycling event, so any of your electronics that you want to get rid of in a way that is no waste, please bring them on the 21st to Wylands. And then finally, just today, I haven't yet worked on this, but I received an inquiry from an Indianola parent who noted our pending resolution about reducing the High Street speed limit to 25 miles per hour, about reducing the Weber Road speed limit, and just anecdotally, because I am there every morning and afternoon, it is a very unsafe place to walk as a pedestrian. I think earlier this year I mentioned that I had purchased a bunch of slow down signs, those bright yellow ones from the city, and planted them all along Weber Road. Those were actually taken down, I think, because the speed limit is 35 and in the corner they say 25. So that was my oversight, but that's another thing that I might try to continue pushing with support of some other parents in the neighborhood.
Okay, great. So this past month I attended the planning and development meeting and kind of checked in with the committee and the chair there, and talked a little bit more about how we could extend maybe some of the activities, including the beautify project, to see whether we could do something with a bike corral or several bike corrals that could make it part of it. So we're going to see if we can meet the deadline and get something like that on behalf of the neighborhood. I've also continued engagement with the Zone In Columbus initiative, serving on the advisory committee there. This month in October, there's going to be 4 different workshops. They'll be essentially the same workshops, so you don't need to attend all 4. There's really no benefit, but they're structured to try to provide people more one-on-one context, so you can sit down, ask questions, have them answered by either the staff or the consultant team that they have. So the city's going to be doing a major kind of effort to advise people of those 4 dates. I would encourage people to go to at least one of those. I've offered to help facilitate at least 2 of those meetings, but I think that they'll be talking a little bit more about the mixed-use corridors and the idea of place types and how they're test-fitting zoning strategies for that. So it would be very informative. I think if it's something that you're interested in, I'd encourage people to get engaged with those workshops.
I'm Donnelly Osborne, District 3. Not a lot of activity in District 3 aside from fielding a few phone calls regarding the amount of graffiti in District 3. There seems to be on every piece of metal, the back of every stop sign, everything is tagged. And we want to try to figure out how we can get a big cleanup done instead of taking a picture of one item of graffiti and then doing a 311 request and then having to do that for every single one instead of just picking a geographic area and having the crew come in and clean up the space. So that's what I'm going to be working on this next month. Yeah.
Commissioner White?
Not too much going on in District 2. There was the developer who had previously provided at least to zoning and variance 201 North Broadway has reached out again, and I think is targeting to come to an upcoming Clipville Area Commission meeting. So I've been trying to work with the incoming District 2 commissioner, as well as I think some of the local neighbors who had concerns, and see if everybody can come together and at least talk and figure out where we stand on things. That way it can at least be presented and everybody has a chance to voice their opinion.
Yeah, okay. That's good. If there's anything we can do to help facilitate that and open communication, that'd be great. Commissioner Wyman?
Michael Wyman, District 7, nothing to report.
Great. Well, then if we can, I'd like to move the zoning and variance Piedmont Road item up to the, so I can ask Stephen Hardwick to.
Yes, this is variance agenda item, this agenda PZA 23-106, 163 Piedmont, to convert an existing 3-season room into office space. The applicant seeks a variance to reduce the minimum side yard from 5 feet to 3.7 feet, along the east side. They are not changing the footprint, they are just they're just sealing in the space that already exists. They're not changing, the distance to the neighbor is the same. The immediate neighbor sent an email in support of it. The commissioner is in support of it. This seemed like one of the easiest votes we've had all year. We've voted 6-0 in favor of it. The applicant is here if he has any questions, but I think he told me if you don't have any questions, he didn't need to make a presentation.
Okay, that's fine. Do any of the commission members have questions for either the applicant or Chair Hardwick? No. I think we've all read the application when we received it. So if we're ready to vote, seeing no objections, start the voice vote. Commissioner Moritz?
Yes.
Commissioner Hively?
Yes.
Commissioner Crowell?
Yes.
Commissioner Bolton?
Yes.
Commissioner Lee Osborne?
Yes.
Commissioner Pfeiffer?
Yes.
Commissioner Weinman?
Yes.
The chair abstains. Motion passes. Good luck to the project. So we'll jump back to the consideration of the prior meeting minutes. Commissioner Pfeiffer?
I have received only some minor changes from Commissioner Lee Osborne, and so we're just gonna work with her and finalize those changes, and if everybody's otherwise okay with it.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve?
I would just like to abstain since I was absent last month.
Okay. Then let's just, if we can, just do a voice vote. All those in favor of approving the minutes with the provisions, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Same sign. That's approved. We're going to jump over the treasurer's report. Treasurer White, Commissioner White, did contact both Brittany and myself earlier. She's recovering from some knee surgery. It's a little more painful than she had expected, so we'll certainly catch up with her next week or next month. But she has been in contact with me. We've been going back and adjusting to this new protocol that the city has for procuring things, and the fact that we had to close the bank accounts. So we're keeping pace with the city's new procedures, and Brittany's Commissioner White's well on top of that. So we have the updates from the city of Columbus. We have the Department of Neighborhoods here.
Good evening, commissioners.
We do, in the back room there.
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't see.
No, apologies, I snuck in late, delayed due to rain. Thank you so much, Commissioner Bolton, for mentioning 614 Beautiful. I do have postcards with more information. If there's anybody who's here tonight at the commission meeting who's interested in more information or would like to get with you to write for that grant program. Tomorrow morning, commissioners, again, apologies for the short notice. Public Service is offering a behind the scenes for their snow operations. That'll be at their outpost on East 25th. It's from 9 to 11. I did tell them 2 hours on a Friday on a work day is difficult for commissioners. So I'll be there and I will share out any key information. If you have any questions, specific concerns for your district or for the neighborhood in general, please feel free to send that information my way, and I will make sure to have Public Service communicate on that. I did also follow up with Kane regarding the deer removal, the conversation that we had at the previous meeting. I had outlined 2 action items, hoping to get information to you all. So I haven't heard back from them. If they've been in contact with you directly, wonderful. If not, I'm going to continue to nudge, so just let me know what has or has not come back to you from Public Service on deer removal. The Department of our Inspector General is offering next week on the 10th at 6 p.m. At Good Shepherd Baptist on Hudson, so over in my neighborhood across the highway, a town hall. It'll be more of an introduction to what does this department do, some of the initiatives currently, or some more information, and then also a panel presentation. So even if you're unable to attend, if you have questions, you can send those to the email address. I believe I did forward the email, but it's dig@columbus.gov. Some of the other Northside area commissioners had expressed, like, haven't heard anything about this department, wouldn't even know what question to formulate. So there is a link to their department site within the Columbus.gov website. It gives the mission statement, their vision. You can see a picture and a brief bio of the Inspector General. So if you're just curious, now that you're more aware of the department, there is some information there. There's an FAQ for more of that, again, if you're unable to attend. From the Department of Neighborhoods, we're looking for feedback on the area commission trainings that have been offered. So if there was something that you liked, something you didn't like, or if you have ideas for next year, especially for our incoming commissioners, something you think would be super valuable, please share.
Since we have two incoming commissioners here tonight, I think, can you tell us a little bit about what training is going to happen before December, or that they'd be able to participate in before the first of the year?
Oh gosh, okay, well, most upcoming is something that Chair of the Zoning Committee, Chair Hardwick, has been helping to coordinate with the planning team so that you can learn about the zoning process, what that staff review looks like. And that'll be an offering on the 25th of October at 6 p.m. Attached to the usual zoning committee meeting. And off the top of my head, I'm so sorry, I cannot recall what we have scheduled for November, but we have heard more from BZS, so the Building and Zoning Services, the Health Department, Public Safety, so sort of each of the major quality of life areas. They have a matching training to introduce area commissioners to what sort of things are within the power and the scope of influence for area commissioners. I hope that helps you.
Okay, yeah, and I know in the past they've had, they've certainly had the commissioner training that deals with zoning and variance issues, and they sort of present the kind of framework of how those decisions get made. They've also had some that are more beneficial just in terms of understanding public meeting rules and Robert's rules and those sorts of things. Since we're now on a coordinated citywide election schedule, and I know not every commission is on that schedule, but at least I think probably the preponderance or the majority of them are. Is there an attempt to make sure that the incoming commissioners have the benefit of training so that as they're seated, they feel like they at least know what they're getting into?
Yes, that is the pathway forward, and I don't expect that it'll be perfect like that by this next year, but I do have a better sort of welcome for area commissioners with a packet of information that's relevant, something that I don't think is more of a manual than what has been shared in the past. So that is in development, and that would be a better onboarding for people.
Yeah. And then there's also typically a form which the city requires for the appointment process to work its way through council and the mayor's office. It usually begins with a form they send to the chair, and then I think I in turn always forward it on to the newly elected members for them to kind of complete a brief biographical statement. It's really about a paragraph of stuff that they're looking for. Is that in process, or?
I brought the forms somewhat filled out with what information I have already, so
Okay.
that can be for your signature and give them to.
Okay, so we can do that before we okay, great.
And then can also send the electronic tonight as well.
All right.
Thank you for the prompt. And yes, the planning training is what is upcoming. I've already been hearing back from zoning committee members who are interested in participating. The planning team from development is hoping to have at least 10 participants. So if any of the commissioners were interested in those sessions that they had already planned, that we're going to be on Front Street, we're going to be here in the neighborhood, a special edition just for Clintonville. So any commissioner is welcome to attend, incoming commissioners included. Or if there are any other members of committees who would like to be trained on that process, we welcome them. And if we don't quite get up to 10, I am also going to extend to Northside area commissioners and the other area commissioners.
Sure.
I think that does it. If you are interested in that training, you RSVP to me. Thank you all very much.
Wait, can I just ask, at this, I don't think I can make it tomorrow morning to the, I'm calling it snowplow training, I know that's not what could you find out, so last year we had some roads that, we had 2 big storms, and we had some roads that got pretty icy, and I know they weren't primary routes, but we had residents who felt like they couldn't get out of their driveways, and we had a car sliding on Chatham Road into the street. And I think at that point, the Department of Neighborhoods told us 311 was not the right platform for reaching out about those concerns. Can you just find out for us, like, where should we direct residents if they are having issues like that this winter?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes.
Can I ask you a 311 question?
Yes.
Twice I've made a request for a left turn signal on Henderson on Old and Tangy Boulevard.
Yes.
twice they've been canceled. This last time I called in and asked why it was canceled, they told me it's because I misclassified it as a new signal, which is weird to me because that's what it would be, a new signal. She went on to say that her supervisor caught it and reclassified it. It's still the same service number. I can still look it up. I go to the app, it's gone. So, and I even asked her, like, well, has anyone else called in? They're like, oh yeah, well, about 8 people have called in the last couple of months about this intersection.
Yes.
So I'd like to know why those service requests are being canceled and why the city's not doing anything about that last turn signal. My wife drops off my daughter at Whetstone, and that intersection is like a nightmare in the morning and in the afternoon. And we even watch kids run out into traffic because that light just stays green for people going east and west. And if you're trying to cross, you know, these kids just run out there. So they really don't have a choice.
Yeah. Thank you for raising that. And I know that the request has been canceled and disappeared from the app. I have more access that's closer to what a 311 staff member has, being part of Department of Neighborhoods. If you still have that number or that email, any of that thread, if you wouldn't mind forwarding that to me, I can look into that and then also bring that with me to public service for that conversation.
Okay.
Yeah. And my due by date will be next month's meeting, so please keep me to that.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions for Swood? Okay. I think Officer Brown is here. And we'll get started. Okay.
Since there's another Officer Brown here. How you doing, sir? A couple things. Yesterday we had a shooting at North High in Donna Ridge. Officers were called out to a shooting. It turned out to be out of a road rage. Both parties were there at the scene. Detectives arrived, found 5 felony charges out of that case. I did send out crime stats. You guys should have got those, I hope so. One thing I noticed is that the car thefts have increased. I went through the car thefts on 3 precincts today, and I would say probably 90% of those car thefts were the Kias and the Hyundais. So our numbers on 3 precincts are starting to rise with those makes and models of vehicles. Also, I went out with the advocate for the unhoused. This past month, we've visited 4 encampments. We had a couple at Kitty Park. We've had several at Echo Park. We've had one right behind the football field of Dominion Middle School. We've had one at Rush Run Park and one at Mid-Garden Park. All of those encampments have been submitted for remediation. So I would probably say most of them will probably be cleaned up as of today. So if you are seeing these encampments, please file the 311 complaints. They come to the CLOs, and we will go out and visit those encampments and then start the remediation process. Also, had several complaints about Portal Park last time I was here. Got several complaints from the OSU Commissioner, Area Commission, Portal Park as well. Got our narcotics supervisors involved to look at the park, and they reached out to our CRT team, and they're going to start heavy enforcement. If they haven't done so today, they're going to start heavy enforcement on that park. So, try to, come across individuals who are drinking, using drugs out in the park. And also today, the texting law, officers are now allowed to stop you and cite you for texting. Period to where they were just advising you, now they're starting to cite you for that starting today. So just be aware, you get forward for texting, it's a good possibility you get a citation. Okay.
And the officers that are doing the enhanced enforcement at Portal Park, Portal Park is just outside of our commission area, but are they aware that of the other very nearby homeless encampments, so they're not just simply chasing people out of Portal Park and they're gonna move behind Lucky's or they're gonna move behind.
No, they're not.
Tim Hortons.
They're concentrating the enforcement on the parks. And they're looking for criminal violations that they can enforce.
Okay.
So that's what they're looking for.
Okay, but they're not involved with the other.
No, so if you're seeing those encampments, then, that still goes through the encampment remediation.
Okay.
I think you mentioned it last time. What is CRT again?
CRT is the criminal response team. So it's a unit of uniformed officers, and their job is to hit target areas that we're having issues with. They do not take any dispatch runs.
Thank you, Officer Brown. I think we've touched on this before a little bit, so I'm sorry if we're covering
That's
the
fine.
ground again. For the camps that are being remediated, have there been like social work outreach or
Yes.
street outreach teams that have been
That is all
organized?
part
Okay,
of the
just making sure.
remediation. That is all part of the remediation. So.
Thank you.
Any questions from the commission? Any questions for the public for Mr. Brown? Thanks very much.
Yes, sir.
I'm just gonna give us a quick update. Captain Gutman from the Division of Fire couldn't be here tonight. He sent a brief update. He wanted, first of all, to thank Commissioner Crowell and Ryan Fauché, who's the chair of the Clintonville Green Spot, for their hard work and volunteer hours with the flowers on the station sign. That's greatly appreciated. We also want to thank the other volunteers who participated with that for their dedication. They look forward to improving the look of the station. They also wanted to advise us over the next few weeks, you will see members of our the fire Division of Fire in the community pumping water from hydrants. This is done to prevent freezing in the winter and gives us the ability to utilize the hydrant in the event of a fire during freezing temperatures. If residents have any questions or concerns, they can reach out to Captain Gutman at 330-714-2502. Brian, I'll give you this so you can include the minutes. They're also going to be conducting annual fire alarm drills at the schools in the Clintonville area. This is coordinated with the Fire Prevention Bureau, the Fire Alarm Office, and local schools to ensure that the schools' fire alarm systems are all working properly. And then finally, they wanted to let us know that they will be recognizing National Fire Prevention Week, October 8th through the 14th. They will have some community hours and an open house at Station 19 on Saturday, October 14th from 1 to 4. They'll have fire safety house on hand, along with safety literature, station tours, those sorts of things. So a quick update for the Division of Fire. Okay, you've been patient. If you want to give us the council's update for us. Sorry to keep you waiting.
No problem. Hello everybody, my name is Harrison Poku, and a few highlights from City Council. Next week, we'll be having a public hearing on safety, hosted by Councilmember Remy. It's going to be October 10th at 4 p.m. at City Hall Chambers. And then the following week after that, City Council is partnering up with Columbus Public School and with the dispatch, and we'll be doing an event for gun safety. It will be happening at the main library downtown at 4 p.m. Wednesday, October 18th. And then we'll be talking about gun violence, and there's going to be a whole bunch of kids basically putting all the gun violence that's been going on. And then Councilmember Favor has also invested in resident safety and preservation by investing $1 million in critical home repair programs. So if you're having any problem with your home repair or anything like that, please reach out to Councilmember Favor's team. And then lastly, Councilmember Remy has expanded the paid family leave for city employees. So these are the highlights from City Council, and if you have any questions, I'm right here.
Great. Thank you very much. Any questions for Poku?
Is that all right?
I pronounced it earlier.
Could you say again where and when the gun safety event is?
The gun safety event is October 18th, Wednesday, 4 p.m. to 6, and it's going to be at the main library downtown.
Okay.
The main library.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
So we'll now move ahead to, I'm sorry. We We don't really have them on the agenda tonight, though. We do have 2 representatives from Columbus City Schools. We'd at least like to recognize them. We have Keith Harris and Mike DeFambo, I think, are here tonight. You guys could stand up if you'd like to. We're running ahead of schedule. If you'd like to take a few minutes to let us know about some of the upcoming things, I know that CCS is trying to get the word out on.
Well, thank you for talking about the gun safety. That's coming up. Hi, my name is Mike DeFavo. I'm the Chief of Staff to Superintendent Angela Chapman. I actually moved to the Knolls recently, and so there's no area commission there, but you guys are like 5 minutes away. So I would love to just come and be involved, if that's all right. Keith Harris, I brought with me. Dr. Harris is the area superintendent over many of the schools in this area. He's been here before. And so I asked him to come along because he knows the neighborhood really well.
No, just thanks for having me. And like Mike said, most of the schools are Whetstone, Ridgeview, Dominion, Indianola, K8, all the feeders I supervise. So just a pleasure to work in the area. Thank you.
And I'll make sure that I give my card to all of you if you ever have any questions. We work very closely with the city, obviously, and we're happy to help advocate on your behalf and obviously advocate for our students.
Great. Well,
Thank you.
very much. Thanks for being here. So if we can move ahead to the capital improvement updates from the Department of Recreation Parks. And I'm sorry, please introduce yourself.
Sure. Is it okay if I stand over here?
Absolutely, wherever you're comfortable. And I think we have your PowerPoint pull up here for you, please.
Craig Murphy with Recreation and Parks. And so thank you for having me and creating this opportunity to share with you some of our updates on our capital planning for this area. Next month, we're going to be here to talk specifically about one project in Whetstone. But we wanted this opportunity today to share with you sort of the broader picture of Whetstone. But also, before I go there, I want to talk about sort of recreation and then sort of bring it down to a funnel to get to Whetstone. Recreation and Parks has a new director. She's been with the department now for almost 2 years. Her name is Bernita Reese. She's been in this industry for about 30 years, spent a lot of time down in Atlanta as a recreation professional there. She was here as an assistant director overseeing all the recreation programs, and then went to Huntsville to be a director, came back to be a director. So we're really pleased to have her, and she's brought a lot of great energy and enthusiasm to the department and professionalism. So much so that accreditation is next on the list. There's 12,000 recreation and parks agencies in the country, and only about 200 have this national accreditation called CAPRA, and has 156 standards, and you have to pass all of those in order to become accredited. And next week, we'll become accredited. So that's really exciting for our city. It was a 3-year process that we condensed down into 14 months. So we worked extremely hard to get this done. Came out of COVID, very focused. And what that means is that we're operating and using best practices. So we had peer reviewers from across the country come in, go through all 156 standards to make sure, it was one of the hardest things I've done in my career. I feel like I've done a lot of hard things. What's up next for us is the master plan and our strategic plan. The master plan is a 10-year document, and then our master plan supports that. It's a 5-year document. So it's a sort of short-term goals versus long-term goals. We are going to kick that off next March. And so we'll definitely be coming through all through Clintonville, all through Columbus, getting feedback and input on, what are the priorities of the community? Where do we need to focus? And where do we want to hear from the community around that. Our last master plan was 2014, so we're just wrapping that one up, and we'll have all the results from what we've done over the past 10 years. So I'm not a big fan of these dashboards, but I think that they are somewhat helpful. And I like to just focus on one thing at a time, and I'm not going to go through all of them. But we have, on the right side, we have 20 nature preserves. And one of the things that we did this year was we created code that protects those nature preserves. I think 3 of them are in Clintonville, or if not, there's more. I mean, there's some small segments too. But we now have code. We adopted that in the first part of the year. But those 20, it's actually now 21, but those have existed without formal protections. And so now, like, no one can just put a utility through a parkland like that. So no one can just put a path in or develop it or do anything. It has strict protections, and we're really proud of that one. Again, whole slew of numbers. Not a big fan of big numbers there, but one of the things that a lot of people don't know about, it's in the middle there, it's 250,000 meals that we have served over the past year. So we're one of the largest, if not the largest, distributor of free meals to kids and after-school programs in summer. We're one of the largest in the state of Ohio. And so that's a pretty big number, and we're throughout Columbus. We partner with the schools, churches, religious institutions, all across Columbus. Many of you are aware that we did our urban forestry master plan. That was a really big task of ours. It actually was in our last master plan to do something like this, and we did it. And one of the outcomes of that was to say we need to prioritize data in our, what do we know about the number of trees in Columbus? And when I say that, it's like, I think it's 70% of trees in Columbus exist on private property. About 30% are on public property. So we were interested in public property because that's the thing that we are responsible for. There are millions of trees, probably 3 or 4 million trees in the parks. But when we look at the street trees, there's 225,000 places for street trees in Columbus. And we inventoried all of them over the past year. So every site we went to, and we said, okay, that's a planting spot. What are the utilities below it? What utilities are above it? What's the species next to it? What's the next, make sure there's no fire hydrant or, all these things all around it. And then we said, okay, when a tree goes in, it should be this type of tree, large class, small class, all that kind of stuff. So we identified that we have 125,000 street trees in Columbus that are planted, and 96,000 vacant spots where we can put trees in. So that is our drive over the next 10 years, is to get those trees planted. So we are prioritizing, right now, Columbus has a 22% canopy. So if you're standing above the city, you look down, 22% of the city is covered with trees. Good thing, right? Well, a city like ours should be about 40%, if not higher. So a lot of our peer cities, like Charlotte, North Carolina, is about 40-some%. So our goal by 2050 is to hit that 40%. And what's important is that, again, we can only cover 30% of the city if we plant everything that we can possibly plant. So we've got to partner with private, on the private side to do that. So planting trees is a priority. Knowing what our data is a priority. We're also in the midst right now of public tree code. So any tree that exists on public property is getting new protections. And that's really important because now if a tree needs to come down on public property, we will measure the width, the diameter of that tree, and for every inch of that tree, we'll be requiring a tree to be planted to cover that. So a 20-inch tree is going to require 10 2-inch trees to be planted to compensate for that loss. So this is code that we're moving forward with right now at City Council. It should be going to City Council later this month. We had public hearings earlier this month. Sorry, I can talk forever about some of this stuff. Someone give me like that look, that move. Keep going, Greg. Keep going.
Can I ask you a couple of questions
Yes.
about it? In the canopy study, I know Clintonville ranked as among the highest canopy coverage in the city. And I appreciate the fact that the city needs to direct its efforts to take areas which are underserved in terms of coverage and direct their tree planting efforts there. But is there an overall strategy for, even though maybe the strategy in Clintonville is not to develop the tree canopy because we already have an effective tree canopy, but to maintain the tree canopy so that we slide into the category of replacing trees that are removed and not so much intentionally replanting trees. So where we get spots where trees have either died back or whatever, how is that managed? Are we simply, by the nature of it, well, we're the last in line because these other areas are so deficient in tree canopy? Are we not going to get tree planting in Clintonville, or are we going to get the selection? What's the strategy?
I feel like you just set me up perfectly for the next
I hope.
slide. Okay. So one of the things that and I'm going to get it. It's two slides. What we have in Columbus, when we look at the distribution of what trees exist today, we have 23% large class trees, 33% small class trees, and 44% medium-sized trees. From an expert perspective, which I'm not, but our experts have told us that's almost the perfect distribution. So we're in a really good place in terms of what we have. Charlotte, North Carolina, for example, has such a high canopy, but a huge portion of their canopy is large class, old, aging trees. So they're going to have trouble in the coming years, and they're starting to adjust for that, but we're in good shape. One of the things that we have not had as a department, and I should have prefaced all of this, forestry is within recreation and parks. I should have said that. What we haven't had is like a maintenance crew. And so what a lot of our maintenance has been on like, hey, we get a 311, this is broken, we got a problem, and then we come out and quote, do maintenance. So what we're doing is we're adding a maintenance crew every other year for the next, I think, 5 years. So we'll suddenly have 4 or 3 maintenance crews that are full-time. And based on the methodology that we've been using, it would take us like 30 years to touch every tree in Columbus based on that model I just spoke of. With our new model, every like 8 to 10 years, every tree will be touched, which is a national best practice. So we're definitely moving in the right direction. And that kind of speaks to like, what's the strategy here? Well, the next slide, we know what exists in Clintonville. So in the street tree right-of-way, there's 7,600 trees, or places for trees. We have 5,800 planted. So Clintonville exceeds like what's typical. You all have like a 41% canopy in Clintonville. That's the city average is 22. So you're doing really well. 48% are in good condition, 48% are in fair condition. So our strategy is to do the maintenance required in terms of taking care of those existing trees and continue to plant because we still have 1,700 spots to keep placing trees in Clintonville.
Are these crews going to act on a preemptive basis? I mean, they're going to patrol around and do a regular circuit and figure out where the problems are before they have to be reported.
Yes, that's the idea, is that it's proactive and it's schedule based on, like they have a whole system for like approaching that. But I think we just got our first crew together this year. So we're just now sort of experimenting with like how best to do that in preventative maintenance.
Is the management, I know today, right now we're talking about trees, but in my neighborhood, there's also the issue of, some people call it the hell strip. It's the tree lawn, which is, it's a lawn strip. It's where the street trees occur. It's also where the utilities are. It's in the right of way. It's public property. In our neighborhood, we have some individuals who take great liberties in introducing all sorts of things into that tree lawn. How does the city manage those? I know to some degree those owners are doing whatever they're doing completely at their own risk, you know, the city could remove all that and it's under no obligation to replace some,
I think you answered it right there. And I think from a tree perspective, like we have approved tree list. We have a subcommission that identifies what those trees are. But yeah, I can't speak to like what happens when people do things in the right way. I mean, it's not their property,
Right.
But I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. But there's no proactive effort for the city to say, we want to manage that. You know, we understand that there's a larger biological, you know, effort made to make that part of the ecosystem. And for instance, when we have somebody in our neighborhood who takes out the lawn area and puts in astroturf, does the city say, hey, look, you know, there's things that we can tolerate and there's things that we can't tolerate. AstroTurf either is, I mean, or is it, you know, we'll respond to that if it's reported as a problem. But
yeah, I mean, I think it's probably a response because I've never heard of that, but I'm not one that deals in like right-of-way issues like that either.
I have a special project that I want to get started, and I'm wondering who you would recommend I talk to.
Okay.
It's the intersection of East North Broadway and Calumet. It used to be a traffic circle a million years ago with a statue in the center and kind of what we would call a roundabout now. But the curved sidewalks are still there in the 4 properties. There's one tree still remaining that is on its last leg. Everything else has died in that circle from the original planting. We want to make uniform planting on those 4 corners. So if that is your right of way.
Yeah.
And so we want to figure out how we can get that rolling with the 4 owners and the city.
Yeah, I would think that we would start with our city forester.
Okay.
Yeah, and we can, and he jumps on the opportunities right away to do site visits and assess opportunities, so I'm sure he'd be willing to look at it.
Okay.
Yep. Haven't gotten to Whetstone yet. I'm gonna move. I promise. So in Clintonville, I think this was all what else to talk about in Clintonville. The study that we did looks at every Columbus community, and this is a report from Clintonville. It's multiple pages. You can find that on our website. Just wanted to point out that Clintonville has 49% small class trees, 27% medium class trees. So not quite the distribution we're looking for, but sometimes it's a function of just what space is available for these plantings. One of the key measures that we look at from a Recreation Parks Department is like how close are people to a park or access to a trail. And in Clintonville, about 86% of residents of Clintonville are within a 10-minute walk to a park or to a greenway access. That's really phenomenal. I think from a city perspective, we're at about 65, 69 overall. And this is the thing that we chase. When we're looking to purchase property, because we have to, like, 220 square miles of Columbus, where are you gonna buy property for a park? This is how we prioritize that. And I think that spot that, you know, I'll just say, like, if Recreation Parks had the deaf school there, it's all pink, you know, like it goes away. So that's how we look at land, that's how we look at prioritizing, you know, spending our acquisition dollars.
Is that a possibility in the future?
I set myself up for that, didn't I? There have been talks, you know, I've been with the department for 5 years, and when I first started, they were talking about something, but that's controlled by the state, and it's extremely difficult to like maneuver, you know, property in that respect. So I've not heard
my backyard.
Is it? Yeah. So yeah, we see it for sure. And this is indicated here. If you look at that top right side, you can see there are no parks in that. That's a gap, you know, sort of a little bit of a desert here in Clintonville. So Whetstone, and my kids raised my kids in Whetstone. I mean, I coached soccer there and everything. So this is a special place. And one thing I've witnessed, and I've been with the department for 5 years, is that Whetstone Park is one of our busiest parks. It's also one of our largest parks. And it's tired. It needs investment. It really does. And so we've been looking at this for a while now, and that's why I wanted to come tonight, was just to sort of share with you some ideas we have and some proposed schedules and so forth about making improvements at Whetstone. So already we installed, in the rec center itself, we installed gym dividers. That's helped with programming. It's one of the things we did during COVID, and then it took a while to get finished. We also just improved and installed catch basins on Hollenbach Road. This is not interesting stuff, I know, but it's important because those were crushed and those were like sinking into the ground. So we've improved those. We also replaced the bleachers at Parker Rose's gazebo. And those other ones have been there, I think, from the beginning of time. They were old, and so we put in 3 new sets, and we wanted to see like how well people responded to them, because no one really sat in the wooden ones. And I was there, it was like loaded. So we're gonna buy 3 more and fill out that whole upper tier and have 6, and they're low, so they don't sit as high as the other ones did and are quite as obtrusive, but they've been very effective and people are using them, and we've got requests to continue. So those are completed projects. These are kind of the non-interesting things, but the repair to the fence in the rear parking lot at Olentangy Boulevard and Ceramic, that's been destroyed for a while. And sometimes we have contractors that we want to bring along and help develop them. And this was we started a project there with one of those builders and contractors, and he just couldn't quite perform the job. So we were able to get the bike path through that area, but the fence, we just signed a purchase order and have a new contractor, so that work will be done probably before the end of November. Yes?
Quick question of the bike connector. It looks beautiful. It makes a lot of difference. When I met people from Parks and Recreation, they were going to do striping to avoid that people open their doors and thus block the connector. When that's going to happen?
I would think that's going to happen once we build the fence. I would think, because again, it was probably that same contractor that had that responsibility, but I'll make sure that we get that done. Water line repair, maintenance facility, they've been using water jugs, so we've got a line that, somehow, I don't know what happened to the line, but it's been broken for a few years, we're fixing it. And then, like I said, we're adding 3 more features to the park roses. At the community center, we're doing some improvements to the HVAC controls, whole new sort of electronic system, so all of our systems are reading together, and it's a serious improvement. Better management of those utilities, and better controls, and it'll save money. We have a green roof at Whetstone, which I wasn't aware of, but we do, and I found out about it because it's broken, so we're going to make some improvements to that coming up. And then the gym floor is going to be resurfaced, and then we're also doing entry plantings on both sides of Whetstone. So you'll come in and you'll start seeing flowers and things, and those will be maintained by our team. So on some of the larger projects, we're replacing all the furnishings within the park. So those old concrete tables and benches from probably the Civilian Conservation Corps back into the 40s or something. They were old and they've held up, but we're replacing all of those. So 26 tables, and then also we'll add 4 ADA accessible tables. So we'll put paths off of the road there, and then so individuals can sit at those tables as well. We're going to add 2 grills and 2 benches.
I know you're dealing with Whetstone right now, but as long as you're touching on the point of accessibility and designing accessible features, The park that's closest to me, which is Glen Echo, which is actually sort of straddles the university area and my neighborhood, is the closest thing that we have to a park. And I've asked before, but that entire park is inaccessible to people with disabilities. So, you know, it's not just the picnic tables or the furnishings that are inaccessible. You cannot get to that park if you have even a moderate mobility disability. So, you know, as much as I appreciate the fact that you're integrating features in that, we have an entire park, which 30 years after the passage of ADA is still inaccessible. And seems to be, you know,
we are in the midst of it, like voluntarily, we're doing an ADA audit. So we've started with 60 locations. We're doing all the community centers, inside, outside, and all the parks associated with community centers. So then we'll go to the next ring, which will be larger parks and assessing those things. So when we do parks, we'll do Glen Echo as well. Okay.
I have just a minor comment.
Yeah.
That is, when we walk through the park all the time, and we do so usually in the early morning, and at that time, we see that all the trash cans are empty, and they've been strewn all over, and it's because of raccoon activity.
Yeah.
It would be really great to have raccoon-proof trash cans down there, because it makes a lot of work for whoever is picking up the trash, which is me sometimes, and also for the people who are regularly scheduled to come and pick it up. They have to deal with that, and it's unsightly and ugly.
Yeah, I agree. I do the same thing. I'm
Yeah.
a runner on first thing in the morning, and I go to Antrim, and I'm like, oh.
Well, you know, there are very well-designed raccoon animal-proof trash cans on the market, and they could just be slapped down there, and they do a great job.
All right, well, thank you for sharing that. 2 new playgrounds in Claytonville. One is at Brevard. I don't know if you've seen that one. We've actually moved it back a little more away from the road, and then at Whetstone. Fantastic. And these cool animals, and there's a dinosaur in there too, I think. These apparently features have been sitting in our warehouse for decades. There were 2 old zoos in Columbus. One was up in Beachwold, and another one further down. And somehow or another, these animals were associated whenever they all went north to a different location, and they've been sitting with us for a long time. And so when we came back to the opportunity to put a playground here, we made it a zoo themed because of that history of the Olentangy River, and then we brought out these creatures. So hopefully all the kids will enjoy it as well. This will be done in probably another 2 weeks or so. Great.
There's a lot of excitement among the children of Claytonville.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's in our staff too. We're thrilled about it. So some of the larger scale projects we're looking at in this next summer, we want to. There's 2 lower fields on the west end of Whetstone, and we want to close one of those. Actually, it's the north one, and we want to regrade and rework that site, because currently there's no drainage whatsoever. Like these parks were built decades ago, and no one was thinking about Johnny's soccer game on Saturday necessarily. So they were never really designed with that intent. So we want to do something different, and we want to work on it at that north field first. And we're going to, it's a floodplain, so it's super tricky. But we're going to regrade the site, create swales for drainage, and then do underground drainage as well to the river. So there's somewhere for the water to go. Today, those are just bowls out there, and they're just holding water, and you have a super high water table in this area. So we also want to put irrigation on that field, because we can maintain the fields better, it'll be safer playing environment, and we can use less fertilizer and things that eventually end up in the river as well. So Pretty big investment, and we want to get through the spring season of all kids playing and then close it. And likely it'll be closed for a year because you have to let everything, all the grass and everything get established, and then the following year have it open for light use and then be able to go all in with full play again. And I'll get to the south field, which is the larger one, next. And we're going to use some, you can leave that up. We're going to use some approaches too that haven't been really used by us before in terms of being able to manage the drainage. So we want to make sure that we can really, do an effective job with, once we install it, maintain it. And then if everything goes well, then we can take it to the lower field, which is twice the size of it. So part of phase 1, 2 includes, we want to put a new roof on the shelter house down in the Park of Roses. The parking lot would probably be next fall. That's that huge parking lot at the shelter house. We want to resurface all of that, as well as that west road that has the loop at the end. We want to resurface all of that further down. It's in orange. There you go.
Oh, here.
Yep. So that'll be phase 1 starting next summer. And we don't want to close the whole park down. So we want to gradually make these improvements, allow people to, it's such a busy place. You just don't want to inhibit people from doing things. But this also allows us to work through multiple budget cycles as well. Yep. And then phase 2, we can show this will be into more like 2025. We want to fix the pond. A lot of the old boulders that were all surrounding the pond fell into the pond. It's been about 20 years since the pond had a light, fix last time. We want to do a better repair there. We can go deeper as well, and that would allow more variety of fish to survive as we stock this pond. Right now, it's not very deep. And then also repair or replace, probably replace the open shelter that's there right now. There's a huge drainage ditch that runs all the way to the river and a large head wall. We want to repair all of that. And then also, when we get all that work done, we want to replace or resurface all of the rest of Holland back. It takes us all the way up. So, yes.
We spoke earlier.
Yes.
And I was going to argue for dedicated bike paths so that families with kids can go to soccer on Saturday morning or Tuesday evening and go safe to the park.
I want to study that, and I remember us talking about that. And he was asking for why, basically, the addition of rooms so that you could have people walk on that walking path, you could have people bike, you could have people in drive. So I want to study it because we have a couple different issues. One is we got trees along there, that's one issue. Another issue is that the more hard surface we put in, we have to compensate for it from a stormwater perspective. So we're going to have to find somewhere to for all those linear feet of hard surface we're putting in, we'd have to address a storm drainage system somewhere, which takes park offline. But that's my primary concern. I think it's a really good idea. And I want to when we get to it, think about that, how we can approach that. And then phase 3, you can go to the map. We'd like to, if we can get the fields sort of working the way we want them to work, and we can do the maintenance the way we want them to do, then we want to improve this other field, the southern one. And we're going to talk a lot about this next month, specifically about the fields. There's also, this is one of our Whetstone is probably one of our largest parks in our system, and it doesn't have a basketball court. And so it's something that we've been asked to include here. And so we're looking at basketball and also potentially pickleball if we can get enough space. But again, it gets back to that issue of like, the more hard surface we add, the more green space we take out because we have to compensate for the stormwater.
Is some of that a matter of managing the amount of hard surface play areas that you have that, okay, tennis may not be as popular as it was 20 years ago. Pickleball is much more popular than it is. That some of these courts transition from one play activity to another. The basketball court takes the place of one of these activities, and we shuffle those, and it's not just, well, they've always been horseshoe pitches here, so it has to always be horseshoe pitches. It can't be developed as something else, or tennis courts and state.
Yeah, I mean, I think tennis courts here particularly, these are really well utilized tennis courts in the established program league system. And depending on what room I'm in, like I get chased out depending if I'm talking to the tennis players or the pickleball players. But tennis is still very popular and still, like I haven't found a way for us to get rid of tennis courts and add pickleball. Instead, it's much more about creating space for pickleball. The big concern I have about pickleball is the proximity to residential,
the noise.
The noise. And so that's why I kind of like the other side, which is a parking lot by the women's club, I believe it is. And that's kind of like, it can handle the noise. So we've created a standard which says we don't want to be within 300 feet of a house. That kind of is the threshold. But yeah, we look at that all the time. And I think like we have a few years too to see kind of how things evolve. People keep saying pickleball is going to slow down, but like it's only sped up. So we'll see. We've got a few years to figure it out before we start planning it.
A lot of people do play pickleball on these courts too. I'm sure you guys are aware of that.
Yeah, and we'll be adding 4 courts at Anheuser-Busch. So that'll be brand new probably next summer. So it'll be interesting to see kind of as we start adding to our system dedicated courts. Right now we only have like one dedicated court location, it's South Columbus. Now we're starting to look at different places around town.
In adding new hard surfaces in your system, have you considered pervious pavement options, which can deal with some of your stormwater issues?
Yeah, that's like a Department of Public Service question. Like, I'm all for it, but I keep hearing like it doesn't work, or they, not in this climate, or you have to vacuum it, or you have to do all these things to maintain it.
Yes.
I'd love to find a way to do it. It's just been a difficult, like, uphill battle at the city. Okay, so that was it. Sorry.
Great. Thanks very much. Are there any questions from the commission or the public? Thanks.
Thank you. We'll be back next month.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely. True, I did images and post them on our Facebook page too.
Let's deal with the demolition issue. Stephen, if you can maybe introduce this, and I'll maybe give a recap of how we're handling it.
Yeah, just the morning of the zoning and variance committee meeting, we got a demolition of a request to waive the 60-day waiting period for the garages behind Indianola Avenue, the Indianola Apartments, and the problem is this is not a homeowner situation. But then the question is, does this fall under the exception of of a residential accessory building that can just go through the process of having the zoning chair, the chair, and the chair of the commissioner for the district handle it? I would think, I was thinking, just as a side note in the future, I think thinking about how to deal with demo permits, the next time you look at your bylaws, I think it's important to streamline, because this is a 60-day waiting period, and if you had it just wrong, all of a sudden you're looking at only saving maybe 3 weeks. Because under the current situation, there's got to be a way to arrange the bylaws so you can have public notice, public discussion, so that the Clinton Theater doesn't come down with no one noticing it, but someone who wants to tear down a building, tear down a garage that's falling apart, that's a code violation, doesn't have to wait.
So in our normal process, when we get demolition applications, if they happen to be in a commercial area, so we had places on High Street where there's a garage demolition application, because it's a commercial zoning, it's a C4 or C3 zoning, even though it's an accessory use, it doesn't seem to fall within the strict definition of what our bylaws say, because they say, you know, a residential use, or they use a term like that. So we've had it screened through your committee, and then it comes to us, and it takes a few weeks for that to happen. In this case, you know, the application got to us at an inopportune time. Looking at it, and looking at the city's definitions of residential district, the city includes apartment districts in their definition of residential uses. I think maybe Stephen's right that we could clarify our intent in the bylaws, and that would be a good thing the next time we update the bylaws. For tonight, what I'd like to do is sort of with full disclosure and public policy, we'll use the exception and waive the waiting period. It didn't have the opportunity to go through the committee. My guess is if it had, there would be no opposition to this. I did reach out to the owner and speak with them, and they are here tonight. So I'll kind of summarize a little bit of our discussion when I did that. Basically, they had gotten a notice from the city in order to repair the garage is in not good shape. It's wood, and it needed to be painted, and they've actually done some work to address the painting and that kind of stuff. But long term, they really don't need the garage, and what they'd like to do is remove the garage and put asphalt paving down. If we put them on the track of waiting until the November meeting to get the waiver, they'd run the risk of the asphalt plants closing before they could get the asphalt down. So in the interest of the neighborhood not having the possibility of, you know, sort of a construction site that's waiting for something to have dirt washing down into the streets or into the Walhalla Ravine, I don't see any benefit to us not acting on this. So, you know, because I think a case could be made that, you know, an apartment, AR2 zoning is apartment residential, that may, you know, fit the definition of a residential use, which I think is what we use in our bylaws. So I'd like to just use the exception. So with the concurrence of Donna, with your concurrence, and Stephen with yours, we'll waive the waiting period and let you know. But we're going to do that as publicly as we can, let everybody know what's happening and why we're doing that. I wouldn't want to see a case where we just ask you to wait until November, you do the and the city would be okay with you waiting. They have, you know, issued you an order, and you're taking care of things. So as far as they're concerned, you're working on it. You're taking care of what you need to do. They were fine waiting until November, but as you pointed out, if you waited to that, there's a chance maybe the asphalt plant closes, and then you've got kind of a raw construction site. And we don't want to see that happen for the neighborhood. So we'll go ahead and waive it tonight, and that explains how we're handling this situation. Do you want to add anything as the applicant hands?
I know, I've learned a lot in the last 2 weeks with this, talking with you, and I appreciate your time and the phone calls. So
yeah.
I'm glad. I appreciate you working with us.
Okay, so we did reach out to the city's code enforcement division that had issued the initial order, and they're on the same page with all this. They're happy to see it going, happy to see that you're taking care of it. So, you know, in this case, they received an order from the city. They're doing the right thing. This doesn't, I think, have any consequence from the aspect of the preservation. The apartment building is a handsome little apartment building. The garage is a much more discreet feature. I don't think it will be missed. So I don't think there's a preservation argument. So that's how we'll take care of it. I'll handle the notice. So I'll take care of it. Yeah.
That's all I can do.
Yeah.
Chairman Terrell,
yes.
That's for the zoning committee meeting next month. It's possible we'll start at 7:30 instead of 7. We have the 6 o'clock zoning training coming in, and the city attorney currently is scheduled to come talk to us at 7:30 about sunshine law issues. I've asked them whether we could move that back to 7 and start the meeting at 7:30. We told them 7:30 when they initially proposed it, and we'll honor that. So we may end up starting at 7, taking a break at 7:30 and moving on. Also, Drew Miller, the vice chair, will be reporting next month. I have a work thing next month, so I'm sorry I will miss your meeting.
Well, as long as all that scheduling is okay with the sunshine laws, it's okay.
Well, the city attorney.
All right, thanks for the update. Next up is we're going to return to the consideration of these resolutions. At last month's meeting, I presented 3 resolutions, and I received feedback from Commissioner Moritz, who recommended ways to kind of streamline maybe the wording of the resolution dealing with the capital improvement budgets. I think I took most of your suggestions, which I think were more aimed at kind of focusing the resolution. Commissioner Wyman, you had expressed some reservations about the item that dealt with the recommendation on the Division of Power and Division of Electricity over in Indianola. And I took, those were well spoken reservations. What I've done is I've taken that issue separately, made a separate resolution for it, so we can maybe present that tonight and consider it for a vote next week, since it's a new resolution that we've seen. But what I'd like to do is maybe go through the 3 resolutions which were presented last time that do have these modifications. So maybe in the interest of, I'll ask Commissioner Bolt maybe to read these for us and see if there's discussion or if we want to take action.
Sure. So the first resolution recommends a speed limit of 25 miles per hour on North High Street. Whereas North High Street is the core of Clintonville's commercial corridor, defines the civic space or the community, and connects all the districts within Clintonville. Whereas numerous schools, including preschools, private and parochial elementary, middle, and high schools, as well as daycares, are located on or adjacent to High Street, with considerable populations of students and parents walking and biking to and from those locations. Whereas High Street businesses are hampered by the existing 35 miles per hour speed limit, which makes on-street parking more difficult and less appealing. Whereas the 35 mile per hour speed limit, I will remove that extra limit, and the detrimental effect upon the shopping and pedestrian experience make it harder for our community to compete with neighboring peer communities, which provide a safer and more welcoming street presence. Whereas the city's own Vision Zero efforts substantiate the clear connection between vehicle speed and the severity of injury to pedestrians or cyclists. Whereas North High Street has been the location of numerous injury accidents, including serious injuries and fatalities. Whereas the city of Columbus has determined for similar reasons to lower the speed limit within the downtown core to 25 miles per hour. Therefore, be it resolved by the CAC that the Commission recommends the city of Columbus lower the speed limit on North High Street to 25 miles per hour. And CAC also recommends that the city conduct a complete street study of High Street from Arcadia to Chase Road to examine current conditions and make recommendations that will improve safety, traffic flow, and parking while promoting walkability.
Now, one thing that we'll see tonight is there's a little bit of redundancy because we addressed the issue of this complete street study both in this resolution and also in the CIP recommendations. And those are sort of interlaced, so you'll see a little bit of language, including the explanation of the safety-related issues of this. But I think Commissioner Moritz mentioned that language seems to support both cases, present themselves in both. And if the resolutions are left to stand alone in any case, it's helpful for us maybe to reiterate that one. So I think that was a good recommendation on his part. I sort of tried to draft it in there in the same way. So
I was afraid that the city would say, we cannot do it, and then they move the resolution aside, even though they would be able to do the complete street study. So it's a good strategy to in those resolutions.
are there any questions or discussion on the commission?
I'd like to discuss.
Yes.
I'm obviously very much in favor of this, as we've discussed in great lengths on the 25 miles per hour on High Street. My only concern is this enough in the sense that we're keeping Indianola then at 35 and North Broadway at 35? And
I would say this is the first one.
Right.
If there's,
and that's my only hesitation on this, is that when the city changed the speed limit downtown, it was in an area, not just necessarily a street. We started the conversation because we're the only piece of High Street that is still 35. So we want to correct that when Worthington is 25 through Worthington and campus is 35, or 25, Short North is 25. So I agree with this. I'm just concerned that, okay, so is everyone now gonna hop on Indianola and go, 45 down Indianola? It's because they can't do it on High Street now. So that's my only hesitation or reservation on passing this. Do we move the issue one block over by not asking for the 25 on both?
And the question came up about Weber Road earlier. I'm not sure how wide we can do it. One reason I hoped that maybe High Street would be a starting point is I think the state route jogs over to Indianola, and they do that, I think, so that they can have the state pay for the viaduct that they rebuild. They meander the state route to pay for the bridges that are in the city of Columbus.
So
I'm not sure if that would complicate things if suddenly part of it was a state route.
it shouldn't, because part of it through downtown is a state route also, and that was, I specifically looked at that, and they've already got past that through downtown, so it shouldn't be an issue through our neighborhood either.
If it's the preference to expand it to the neighborhood or change the direction of that, or if there's a preference to start with this and see if we can build on it, if we're successful in this, or at least let the city know that our preference would be to expand it more community-wide.
Osborne makes a good point. So I can see the reason going for High Street, because it's between two parts where it's 25 miles an hour. I'm also thinking, I'm thinking North Broadway, thinking Weber.
Henderson?
Yeah. So all those would certainly improve the neighborhood if it was 25 miles an hour, just like it is in downtown on Street, and there's a whole street. I want to go bold and ask for all the approved streets to become 25.
Can we ask Officer Brown to chime in on, like, enforcement? What are your thoughts on?
I think maybe trying for High Street first. I don't know how much time individuals want to save when they jump on Indianola, and because it's a faster route. I don't think it's going to make that much difference, because I don't think you're going to have that many intersections where you have red lights that are slowing down.
But as far as enforcement, is it easier if it's 25 everywhere, or, if you have 25 on High Street and then you have Broadway being 35 and Indianola being 35?
It is easier. I can tell you from my time on patrol, I've actually worked streets where I've had one direction 25, the other direction was 35.
Okay.
And so, yes, I have.
Surely things could be worse.
So, yeah, it would make it easier in that sense, but you give officers a couple of months to recognize those speed limits, they'll be fine.
Okay.
Well, because we're kind of also mentioning the complete street study, which I think is essential, because that causes the city to analyze not just car movements, but the whole body of the street, including pedestrians and crossing points and that kind of stuff. And there would be some investment with that. I guess one of the reasons I focused on High Street is I think the city could, that might be something they could bite off and know already, okay, we know public service is going to have to change out X number of signs. And maybe that's something that just it could be the first piece. I mean, I am completely in favor of all of the cross streets and going down to 25 as well. I'm maybe hopeful that if this could be a first step towards that, but whether we want to kind of go for broke and ask for that now, or whether that kind of gives them more reason to say, well, this is just too big of an ask right now. So since we can't do the whole thing, we'll wait to start on it, or something.
Yeah, I think the street study is an important component. I mean, being in District 8, which includes Morse Road, one of the most common things I hear from constituents is Morse Road is too fast. And just, I guess, sort of, sometimes I think as devil's advocate, while it may be better for the folks that live in that corridor that if the speed limit was 25, I often wonder if it's not worse for the city overall that we're slowing things down. Especially, and I think it's different if you're talking about east to west or north and south corridors. Traveling north and south through Columbus is pretty easy. East to west, more difficult, at least for distances. So I do wonder if, like Broadway, for instance, obviously that's a heavily traveled east to west corridor because there aren't a lot of other good options.
Yeah.
But whereas north and south, I think if you're going further up on High Street, you can go over 315 or 71, so you don't need to move fast through High Street. Whereas Morse Road, maybe it does make sense that folks are traveling faster through that area.
So what do we, where do we come down here? I mean, do we not do anything? Do we?
We definitely do something.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm just trying to outline the range of options here.
I would like to see this as a starting point, and then we can, go for a bigger ask from that. Because, it's not just the city to ask for this. They changed a lot of state law several years ago. The state has to sign off on every speed limit change, whether it's a state route or not. So I would just start with High Street.
So yeah, this seems incrementally. This is an ask, and maybe avoids the complexity of some pushback from some other pieces.
Also, I know there was a lot of
strategic thinking.
I know there was a lot of discussion about the Indianola corridor. I don't exactly remember where that landed or where that's at in the process, but is that moving forward with that whole change?
Yeah, the street rebuild and the new shift in the bike lane organization, that'll happen. It's been pushed back a year in terms of when it's going to happen in the fiscal year because there were right-of-way acquisition issues. Because it's a state project, the state is absolutely committed to having full control of the right-of-way. So even though the city was okay with the fact that there were some sidewalks and some edges that were actually in private property, the state wasn't okay with that. And so they had to go to those property owners and say, we need to purchase a foot of your property. With care, but it took a long time to write all those deed executions and that kind of stuff to acquire that.
But is part of the idea there to slow?
Yeah, the whole thing was aimed at traffic.
So there is some.
I don't know that they were lowering the speed limits, right? I mean, it might be that it's a complementary activity to say, sure, we did this and extend it. But I think Mike brings up a good point that if there's if it's let's sort of plan our battles and win this one and maybe get some momentum.
And I'm willing to commit to work with you tonight, Commissioner Lee Osborne, on furthering this.
I'm totally supporting that.
Yeah.
We can build on that, but
Next month's record.
I'm also fine with moving forward with this. So I'm also fine with moving forward with this. Focus on High Street for now.
are there any questions from the public?
Just one comment. I hope that it's not just like they did downtown, because my perception, if the city's actually done studies that contradicts this, I'll take their numbers over my perception, is that it hasn't made a whit's bit of difference how fast cars go downtown. As long as you have High Street as a 7-lane, built like a 7-lane almost freeway, people are gonna go fast unless they see a police officer there, unless police officers show up there so often we know that we're gonna get caught. So this is a great first step.
And I think to that point, the real benefit here, I think, will be in the complete street study. I think that's likely to have collateral recommendations that the city pursues. Outside of that, they'll have a lot more to do with really enhancing safety of pedestrians. Because we've had several pedestrians killed in the past couple of years, crossing High Street, and one of them still an unsolved hit and run accident down in my neighborhood, down by Arcadia. So, and that's probably the worst section. Paul.
I'm for the resolution. It's not without precedence in the region. I think it was announced today that Dublin is lowering speed limit at Bridge Park from 40 to 75 to 25 along Riverside Drive. So that's a big move, I think.
Yeah. So, does somebody want to introduce a resolution to act on this? Motion to adopt. Okay.
Second.
There's a second. You ready for a vote on this resolution?
Right, all right. Full plus.
He's got to call up into the schedule. Give him a minute. This is resolution
2023-2.
Okay. Okay, then on resolution 2023-02, recommending speed limit of 25 miles on High Street, should all the resolution be adopted? Commissioner Moritz? Yes. Commissioner Hively?
Yes.
Commissioner Kroll?
Yes.
Commissioner Bolton?
Yes.
Commissioner Lay Osborne?
Yes.
Commissioner Piper?
Yes.
Commissioner Wyman?
Yes.
And the chair will vote yes. Alright, so next resolution.
Great, the next one is resolution 2023-03, recommending items for the capital improvement budget. Whereas CAC has worked to obtain input from residents and had asked for consideration and study from the CAC Planning and Development Committee. Whereas input included an extensive public survey with over 800 unique participants, which was produced over a period of 12 months and included careful vetting and evaluation. Whereas the CAC and Planning and Development Committee reviewed and coordinated previous planning projects, including the 2015 Clintonville Mobility Framework Plan. Whereas North High Street is the core of the Clintonville Commercial Corridor, defines the civic space or the community, and connects all the districts within Clintonville. Whereas numerous schools, including preschools, private, parochial, elementary, middle, and high schools, as well as daycares, are located on or adjacent to High Street with considerable populations of students and parents walking and biking to and from the locations. Whereas North High Street has been the location of numerous injury accidents, including serious injuries and fatalities. Whereas the existing Whetstone Rec Center was completed in 1956 with limited renovation in 2008, the center struggles to meet the needs of the community, which have changed significantly since it was completed. Whetstone Rec Center is the oldest rec center operated by Columbus Recs and Parks. Whereas Whetstone Park is the center of much of our community's opportunity for social and recreational activity. Elements for the park, including the shelter house, no longer connect with the sensibilities of the community they serve. Shelter house, which was once a busy hive of activity, is typically vacant and seldom used. Not too far. Therefore, be it resolved by the CAC, the Commission requests that the City of Columbus replace Whetstone Rec Center with a modern facility which meets the needs of the community and is on par with the direction and programming of other recent CRNP rec centers. Number 2, furthermore, the Commission recommends that the city establish a budget and timeline to redevelop Whetstone Shelter House to reimagine how it can align it with contemporary needs and aspirations of the community and develop operational partnerships to make redevelopment feasible. Number 3, CAC also recommends that the city conduct a complete street study of High Street from Arcadia to Chase Road to examine current conditions and make recommendations that will improve safety, traffic flow, and parking while promoting walkability. The Commission requests that the city develop a shared use path to extend the existing Indianola Bikeway north from Morse Road to Worthington and Allen Creek Connector. The Commission requests that the city commit an expanded cycle of maintenance and repair to area sidewalks and curbs and the completion of vital missing pieces for our pedestrian network as indicated in the mobility framework plan.
So some of the comments that Commissioner Moritz had made was the idea of in the previous resolution, I had kind of expounded upon how the funding of UIRF was used for sidewalk improvements, and he pointed out, and I think he was right about this, that how they fund things is kind of for them to decide. But what the resolution concludes is those mobility improvements, the sidewalks and curbs that that the city that we've made it put them on notice where those repairs are needed in the mobility plan. We see that as a priority. So I think he was right to sort of focus it on tell them what the need is and don't try to tell them how to do it. He was right about that. So and then you did see the redundancy between this and the last resolution in terms of the complete street study. So maybe it's two different desks, and between public service and capital improvements, they sort of say, okay, we need to put some planning money towards this, and public service might say, well, we're doing street work anyway. That might help to kind of make this happen. Again, questions or discussion?
So I have one stupid question. So
No stupid questions.
Or stupid questions. So what's the shelter house?
The shelter house is, well, maybe I want to make sure I'm using the right term, is right down kind of in the center of the park here. And, I think when the park was built, that building was staffed. This is again back in 1956, I think is when it was.
It's the west end of the Park of Roses.
It's part of the Park of Roses.
It is part of the Park of Roses. And I think at that time it was a staffed facility, so somebody from Recreation Parks would come, open the building, there might be
there still is such.
There is.
Every time I've been there, the building is locked.
You have to reserve it.
Yeah.
That's the point.
It's a process.
Is there a way for us to position it so it's an asset? that building has been largely replaced by a couple porta potties, you know, and I guess I think that there's a better way to make that an active part of the community. It just seems like it's out of touch with now I understand that the staff focus is up here at the rec center, and but I think you could develop a partnership to figure out a way to activate that so it's an active component of the park and not, you know, and again, I actually am hopeful that the resolution tonight, which is dealing with capital improvement budgets of the city, are longer term issues, and if recreation parks is at the point of beginning 2 new cycles of either master plan or long-term planning, I think this sort of allows you to know that the aspiration and hope of the community is larger maybe than incrementalism, that we see other newer, more modern facilities that seem more attuned to the communities. They seem more accessible, you know, things are on one level. They seem, you know, to embrace a lot of new features that, you know, we've created workarounds to make this building work as good as we can, but we're still dealing with essentially an Eisenhower era building that we're trying to adapt to contemporary programming as much as possible. If we were to plan this park today, I'm not sure that a rose garden would be the #1 thing that the community would say they would want. I think maybe in its day, rose gardening was very popular. I think today, you know, the necessity to use chemicals and enrichments, I think there's probably a much different focus in terms of people's interest in horticulture today than roses. Doesn't mean the roses would go away, but is there a way to make that appeal more to a different, you know, changing dynamic in the community? That I would hope would be part of the discussion that we have with you, and part of that would be, you know, that we see this as maybe the time to replace those facilities, or at the very least reimagine them.
So in this resolution, so you're talking about like the shelter house. And mostly I'm viewing that as like a special events location, like at some of the parks that you rent it for a wedding. I know with Rotary we would do we started tree lighting down there, so we rented that out for you know, the hot chocolate and the carolers with that. So I like the idea of having a special event space. You know, I don't know if any of the high schools have concerts there, or, you know, anything like that. I don't think it's easy to know that it's available for rental. So maybe there's a process of educating the neighborhood that it is available for rent, you know, to use that building. And sure, it could be updated with, you know, a better kitchenette, but, you know, all those types of things that would help a caterer to actually have a wedding reception there. Easier. As far as the Park of Roses, it's such a unique just gem in our neighborhood that it's kind of a sleeper that people don't know about. And I think that's you know, a problem with us not being part of the Columbus Chamber of Commerce, that we don't have our commercial corridor advertised with the rest of the 5 miles of Columbus. We don't have at the airport pictures of the Park of Roses because nobody's promoting this part of Columbus through the chamber. But I would hate to see anything happen with the Park of Roses, even though I can't grow a rose for anything. I love the fact that it's the largest rose garden in the country.
As they develop it,
yeah.
Where do they go from here?
Sure.
And yeah, I don't think taking out the roses is the.
What is the mobility framework plan, or is that Clintonville specific, or is it City of Columbus
That is
specific?
Clintonville specific. That's the mobility framework plan that we passed.
And I don't know if
2015.
I don't know if we want to just reference it there. That's just mine. It's like what the city
I can
knows
add that to that.
We can clarify that, so. It's less ambiguous. There may be other mobility plans that they serve. And my hope really is that, again, there's actually a synergy here between the presentation that we had from Recreation Parks tonight and this, and what I would hope is that it's clear to Recreation Parks that we want to get on board with that effort to be part of the master planning and see what the potential is, because I feel the same way, that it just seems like this is an unlocked kind of secret garden in a sense, and how do we make it more of a...
Right, when I bring people here from out of town, they've never heard of the Park Roses.
It used to be the headquarters of the National Rose Society, I think, and I think that moved in the maybe late 60s or early 70s, that we were no longer kind of the capital of the rose cultivating world or whatever. Maybe that took some of the energy out of it, but I also think maybe there's a way for it to, reinvigorate itself by maybe adapting to different needs.
I might have been wrong when we talked about this, but what about the, in 3, we talked about promoting walkability. What about bicycling? Is that sort of like in there between the lines, or have we dealt with that head on as a commission when we're talking about what we really want for High Street?
I would say that it is there in between the lines. When we talk about the complete street study, that's cars, that's bicyclists, that's pedestrians, and how they all share these points.
But when it says promoting walkability, it makes it sound like that's the priority. And I agree that it is, but I would also like to see bicycling in there. I mean,
Commissioner Moritz is
I'm
the
sure
expert.
Commissioner
This
Moritz
is-
will have something to say about
Yeah,
this.
I'm jumping on board. Of course, I was going to say, oh, we can maybe replace parking with cycling. Promoting walkability of cycling.
Or is cycling included in the traffic?
We could add cycling, or are you saying it already is kind of baked into the cake?
It doesn't
hurt to
to repeat it over and over.
Which is my experience.
Well, and now I'm like going down a rabbit hole, but also like public transit, like multimodal, I feel like this could also improve less.
Well, the complete street study is going to look at
includes
those bus
that,
stops
yeah.
and that kind of stuff. It was, they did as much of a complete street study on the Indianola corridor during the discussions there as I think they could afford. And yeah, they had code involved in the process, and they were as imaginative as they could be in terms of, and they adjust where those stops occur so that they work better with the flow of the traffic, and cyclists trying to, they always look at the potential conflict between the cyclists and buses, as buses try to get over the curb, and they have bike lanes and that kind of stuff. So, that's kind of there. I would be very happy if we could add cycling in
Maybe not promoting cycling more.
Is everyone comfortable with this?
That's fine.
Since, like you say, it's already kind of baked in.
I think it
Because
doesn't hurt to.
the complete streets model includes.
Can we take public comment?
Yes,
on
yes,
this?
absolutely. Are there any questions or comments from the public?
As I sit back here in a very slow burn. Okay, Sandy Simbrow. I'm trying to decide if it's ignorance or arrogance. If you don't like in Eisenhower era things, don't be on the freeway tonight, because that's Eisenhower era. The shelter house, if you aren't using it, if you don't know about it, it's because you haven't looked. It's been there for years. It's been used for years. And yes, it was staffed, and there was an office for the Rose Society. And I believe there is still a Rose group that regularly takes care of the Rose Garden. And yes, it moved to Portland, Oregon. And I'm sorry if you have people that come to town don't know about it, because most Rosarians from all over the world know about it and come here. Just because they don't fly a flag or call you and tell you they're here, there are people here. The Oakland Park Nursery and the Recs and Parks used to have the Rose Festival every year. Then we had pandemic. And we lost it. So apparently, when we lost the Rose Festival, and you lost the interest because nobody's gardening roses anymore, items 1 and 2 were covered earlier. I think that it's kind of the first to offend me as a resident after having heard a wonderful presentation of a 5 and 10 year plan. If I had not heard the presentation earlier, I might feel differently. But as it is, as a resident,
Any other comments or questions? Do we want to move on any action on this resolution?
I make a motion to pass it.
Is there a second? Brian, are you close to ready? Give me a hands up. Commissioner Moritz?
Yes.
Commissioner Hiley? Sorry.
Yes.
Commissioner Call?
Yes.
Commissioner Bolton?
Yes.
Commissioner Lay Osborne?
I'm torn. I think it needs more crafting, so as is, I'm gonna say no, but I'd like to come back, I would love to revisit.
Commissioner Pfeiffer?
Yes.
Commissioner Weinman?
Yes.
And Chair votes yes. Move on to the
Move on to the final.
final one for tonight, and we will return to, we can read it.
Yep, resolution 2023-04, recognizing the Columbus Metropolitan Library for their 150th years of service to the city of Columbus and advising them on the needs of the community. Whereas CAC wishes to extend its thanks and appreciation to the Columbus Metropolitan Library for its ongoing service to Columbus and Clintonville in particular. Whereas CAC recognizes and is grateful for the support and hospitality extended to the commission in accommodating our monthly meetings and the activities of the commission. Whereas the CML is celebrating and commemorating its 150 years of service. Whereas residents of Clintonville are enthusiastic patrons and friends of the library, enjoy its many services, and actively use the library as a source of recreation, lifelong learning, community. Whereas CML is in the process of preparing for an upcoming library bond issue. Therefore, be it resolved by CAC. 1, Commission congratulates CML for 150 years of service and looks forward to supporting the library as it continues forward as a defining part of Clintonville community and the city of Columbus. 2, Commission also extends its sincere gratitude to the staff of the Whetstone branch of the Columbus Metropolitan Library for their presence in our community since 1985. CAC requests the library include replacement of Whetstone Library with a new facility in its next capital cycle, and that any upcoming bond package should include replacement of the library with expanded services and capacity on par with other recent CML regional branch projects.
Any discussion? I didn't really receive any comments on this, so it's the same wording as last one.
Get rid of that 2 in the first one.
Yes.
Thank you.
I think there was one in the title as well.
Yes, thank you. That I thought.
150.
Yes.
Any discussion?
Not sure if I remember correctly, we discussed last month whether it was going to be replacement or improvement or enhancement.
I don't want to presume the outcome, but I think if you look at the size of this as a regional branch, it's significantly smaller than other regional branches, even though I think the use of this library might be the highest of the regional branches. And if you see the work that Columbus Metropolitan Libraries has done with other recent libraries, they're fabulous. They're really, really good facilities. And, you know, I think this is a great library. It's served the community very well. But, you know, maybe it's possible it could be completely rethought, which happened in the case of the Hilltop Library. The Hilltop Library was transformed from its former staff to kind of that more contemporary vibe. But it was a really significant renovation, you almost wonder, would it have been easier to just clear the site and start over? It's that drastic. But they've done both, and you know how they would fit here. I know it's a complex site. They have partners to work with in terms of recreation parks, but the size, the amenities, the things that they're doing with not just one meeting room, but several community rooms. The Hilltop Library that I mentioned, which is actually a renovation, had 4 community rooms, you know, some this size, some half this size. You know, this room is incredibly actively scheduled. It's very hard to book a room. Hilltop manages to book those 4 rooms just as actively. There's expanded things like help centers and student, you know, they do the core of all the offerings here. It's just that those other facilities tends to be bigger and brighter and bolder. You know, that's great. You know, it's fabulous.
The first line of number 3, it shouldn't be library, it should be city. The commission requests that the library include replacement of the list on library.
It's not the city.
This will be directed at the library as opposed to the city.
Yeah. Oh, it is directed.
Yeah,
Separate.
It's a different, you know, I mean,
entity.
we're writing a letter to the library in this case.
Oh, okay.
I guess, what's the difference between the bond package and the levy?
Help me out with this.
Because, right, the levy is November 7th.
Yeah, and I think that's essentially operating money. I think the bond money is, I think typically, they bond the construction projects, and they operate with levies.
Good question.
And sort of like the city, I don't think that the library ever fully stops their capital planning. I mean, as projects happen, and in that sense, we've also been almost, you know, there have been other regional branches that have been built since our library's been built. They've had a full lifespan of an art. They've been torn down and replaced with a new facility, and they're already, you know, in the time that we've had. So, you know, it's just, this is a great library. It's well used. I think it deserves significant.
We just need to go on record as saying that we want
one,
yeah. Since the record has
been
stated
that
yeah, right. We didn't want one, so.
That's, thank you for testing that. Are there any questions from the public? Questions, comments from the public? Is there a motion to take some action on this tonight? Commissioner Morris, is there a second? Second. Brian, as soon as you get here. Okay, Commissioner Morris. Yes. Commissioner Higley.
Yes.
Commissioner Crowell.
Yes.
Commissioner Bolden.
Yes.
Commissioner Leigh Osborne.
Yes.
Commissioner Piper.
Yes.
Commissioner Wyman.
Yes.
Chair votes yes as well. So the last resolution tonight is the one that we've introduced. This deals with, although allow Commissioner Bolden to read it if we can. All we need to do is read it tonight, maybe we'll consider it next week.
Resolution 2023-05, requesting the city pursue a plan to solicit proposals for redevelopment of the city-owned property at 3500 and 3568 to 70 Indianola Avenue. Whereas CSC wishes to see effective reinvestment and redevelopment, especially along the existing mixed-use and commercial corridors, including Indianola Avenue. Whereas the Commission is grateful for the work of the Department of Public Utilities, including Division of Power and Division of Water, and appreciates their service to the city. Whereas existing city facilities at 3500 and 3568 Indianola do not realize the full potential of the location or the site. Whereas Clintonville Neighborhood Plan encourages multi-use development of appropriate density consistent with the preferences of the community along corridors, including Indianola Avenue. Whereas the city's ownership of the property provides leverage to influence the quality, character, and civic contribution of a possible redevelopment, but only if the city exercises that influence in an intentional manner. Whereas none of the existing buildings were purpose-built for the divisions of electricity or water, but purchased secondhand with limited remodeling to accommodate their new uses. Whereas the availability of a combined parcel of 9.9 acres with 650 feet of frontage on Indianola Avenue can be expected to attract the interest of a broad range of development professionals. Whereas the competitive nature of a structured offering could encourage adjacent redevelopment either as combined, collateral, or follow-up on projects, acting as a catalytic project to realize the intent of the Clintonville neighborhood plan. Therefore, be it resolved by the CAC, 1, the commission recommends that the city of Columbus relocate the Division of Electricity and Division of Water from their current locations on Indianola Avenue and offer those vacated properties for redevelopment offers within a framework, includes a framework of community input, and which is consistent with the Clintonville neighborhood plan. 2, the commission considers that the relocation of the offices and operations of the Division of Power and Water to other areas of Columbus will act to encourage redevelopment and stabilization in those areas, which may be struggling to attract reinvestment.
Okay, thank you. So, Commissioner Wyman, you brought up very good concerns, objections last time. You may still have the same objections and concerns. This allows us maybe to just focus on those. But the intent in bringing this forward is simply a large piece of property there, and Indianola has changed enormously in the past 100 years. And those two properties, I think, that the city has, I would almost describe as blight along that stretch of street. Indianola is going to change in the next 20 years considerably. And while the city has that property, they have the ability to sort of greatly influence what can happen there. If they choose to, solicit offers to decide what's going to happen there, require the, proposers to show what's going to happen there that follows the underlying precepts of the Clintonville Community Plan. It's a chance to kind of show how that Clintonville neighborhood plan could be implemented in this, rather than just piecemeal. We're going to just deal with whatever developer's personal interpretation of that is. But while it's owned by the city has a chance to, I think, be creative in how they do that. They did that with the property in North Market. They sort of asked the market how they wanted to envision their future in terms of stabilizing the market, and the market was able to sort of be part of that process in deaccessioning that piece of property from the city, but the North Market had the input to sort of help direct their future. I think this is an opportunity like that. I mean, if this isn't something that's shared with the commission, I don't want to force this as an issue, but I think it would be something where we could say, yeah, there's an opportunity here, and the city should consider this as a way to take part in that redevelopment and help direct and guide that development that's going to happen on Indianola. So I'd like this to be something where we're proactive about trying to make that redevelopment that's going to happen along Indianola more central to what the neighborhood plan asks for. That's the point in asking for it. Now, whether it's clumsy and doesn't do that right, and the objections you brought out, well, no, it's okay to be paid for. Those are great questions, but that sort of briefly describes the objective here. And maybe the wording is clumsy or doesn't get to that. Happy to allow commission members to contribute their ideas. I can revise this and we can discuss it next month's meeting. But that's kind of the objective here. Is that I think the city owns a parcel here, and I can believe that sooner rather than later it's going to be developed in some fashion. And if we can help direct that, I think that'll be in the community's best interest. Maybe.
I think my issue with this is it's like not even on my radar. So, I mean, you brought something forward that, I really need to think about, because out of everything we've talked about in these other resolutions, those are more hot buttons, I would say, than this one. And if there's any building that is my hot button, it would be the rest of the theater that's still standing on High Street before Brighton, that is boarded up and is an absolute eyesore in the heart of our neighborhood. So I'll read it again slowly and think about it more this next month. You have the theater, where we had the 5-story plan that was not approved, and we now have basically the strip mall. And then you still have the rest of Clintonville Electric, the neighboring building that's sitting there. Right. That's, I guess, more of a concern of mine than the utilities on Indianola at this point.
Yeah, but
But
again.
you're forward thinking,
that-
and I'm
that-
just thinking of
that
what I'm
being
looking
a
at every day.
privately owned
That's
property.
a privately owned person.
Sure,
Right, yeah.
sure.
And
It's
I,
so nice.
yeah.
So,
Considering the time, I'll hold my comments.
I would welcome comments, or if you could pick up the phone and talk to me, or what, I honestly would like to, if there's things that could be addressed. I mean, there may be things that fundamentally you're never gonna get on board with this. I get that, okay, but if I could.
I went through